A disrespectful traffic stop spirals out of control when a racist cop pulls over an elderly black widow on a quiet Georgia road. His arrogance is unchecked until she speaks. We don't give warnings to her kind. Those were the first words Officer Travis Dunley said after stepping out of his cruiser. The words weren't just said, they were spat, like venom laced with centuries of dusted-off entitlement, amplified by the power of a badge and a uniform. The road was quiet, one of those long, lazy southern stretches lined with pine trees where time seemed to move slower and racism faster. The sun hung low, casting a burnt orange glow over the asphalt. A breeze rustled the leaves, but even nature seemed to hold its breath when Travis swaggered toward the silver sedan. Inside the car, hands already placed calmly on the steering wheel, sat a woman with steel-gray hair tucked beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Her posture is straight, her presence unshaken. Her name was Evelyn Cross. From his mirrored sunglasses, Travis sized her up. Old, alone, black, easy. "You know why I pulled you over?" he asked, hand hovering over the holster just enough. "To send a message." Evelyn's gaze moved to the side mirror slowly. She didn't flinch. "No, officer, I do not," he smirked. "Window tint, license plate frame, and driving too careful, like you got something to hide." She blinked once. "I'm on my way to my husband's grave. It's his death anniversary." Travis didn't care. He waved her words away like smoke. "Step out of the car." From across the road, a man walking his dog paused. He noticed. Another vehicle passed slowly, its driver rubbernecking just enough to witness, but not enough to stop. Evelyn unbuckled her seatbelt. Graceful, deliberate. She stepped out in polished low heels and a navy blue dress, pressed sharp. Her pearl necklace glinted under the sun. Travis looked irritated. "Don't try anything. We got procedures." Without waiting for permission, he yanked open her car door, rifled through her glove box, tossed aside tissues, sunglasses, even her husband's folded obituary. "Hey!" the passerby shouted faintly, but Travis turned and barked, "Mind your business!" Then came the moment that shifted the air. He reached into her purse and pulled out a worn leather ID badge. He squinted, then froze. The seal read, U.S. Attorney General's Office, Civil Rights Division. Below it, Special Advisor Evelyn Cross. His mouth parted, but no sound came out. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't move. She only said one line. "Calm as thunder rolling far in the distance. You should Google my son." The silence that followed was loud. Travis looked like someone had just cracked open his ribcage and removed his spine. His arrogance deflated, melting into visible confusion. She turned to him, slow. Her eyes were kind, but her stare was absolute. "My husband fought for this country. My son protects it from people like you." And then, just as the second patrol car pulled up behind him, called for backup without cause, Evelyn looked past Travis to the approaching officer. She whispered, "Your department won't survive this." The video hit the internet like a slow-moving avalanche, quiet at first, unnoticed even. But by noon the next day, it had already cracked 3,000 views. By evening, it had passed 30,000. And by dawn, it was fire. No commentary, no music, just raw footage from a cruiser's dashcam showing an elderly black woman being harassed, her ID tossed, her dignity dragged, until she calmly dropped a bomb. "You should Google my son." The clip stopped right there. It was shared by a local civil rights account first. Then a regional justice page reposted it. Then came the viral Black Twitter push. The video had no filter, no protection, and no pause. Into a quiet newsroom just outside Atlanta, journalist Lena Brooks sat upright at her desk, watching the video on repeat. Her notepad beside her already had 3 names scribbled down. Evelyn Cross, Officer Travis, Dunley Google, her son, she typed fast. Background checks, birth records, property registries. She wasn't just a reporter. Lena had been chasing racial injustice. Stories for years. And something about the calm power in Evelyn's voice stirred her gut like she'd heard thunder before the storm. 10 minutes later, she found it. Dr. Adam Cross, federal cybercrime prosecutor, national security clearance, level 5, spearheaded 2 major DOJ investigations into police corruption, taught law at Harvard. Father, deceased military vet, awarded posthumously. Mother, retired legal advisor to the Civil Rights Division. Lena blinked. Holy hell! She stood up so fast her chair rolled back. She turned to her editor. I'm filing now. This woman is the mother of one of the most powerful prosecutors in the country. Her editor leaned in, eyebrows rising. He's active? Very. By noon, Lena's story was live with the headline, Black Widow harassed by cop with civil rights advisor. Her son is a federal prosecutor. And just like that, the storm hit full speed. At the local precinct, Officer Travis Dunley sat frozen. In a back office, his supervisor, Lieutenant Marks, stood beside the coffee machine, phone to ear, pale-faced. You're telling me? The woman from yesterday. Her son's who? The voice on the other end hissed back. He's DOJ, for God's sake, and we've got footage of your guy ransacking her vehicle without cause. This isn't just PR, this is federal liability. Travis fidgeted in his chair, his jaw tight, his hand trembling slightly. I didn't know, he muttered. That's the problem, said Marks. You never know who you're messing with. And now everyone will. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat on her back porch, tea in hand, watching blue jays flutter through the garden her husband once planted. She hadn't turned on the TV. She hadn't opened her laptop. But she knew. Her son, Adam, called. Ma, it's everywhere. I figured, she said calmly. They always forget the quiet ones. His voice cracked with emotion. You okay? I'm fine, baby. I stayed calm. I let the system see itself. Adam paused, then said, I'm coming down. I'm filing a motion. They're not sweeping this. She didn't protest. She simply said, then make it count. That night, Officer Dunley's name was trending. So was Evelyn's. But one name quietly rose. Through the ranks of mentions, Adam Cross. Some people remembered him from the Senate hearings on digital surveillance. Others recalled his scathing grand jury testimonies against law enforcement corruption. But many had forgotten his roots. His mother had once fought for desegregation of southern universities. She'd marched, she'd sued, and now she had been dragged by someone too arrogant to ask questions. The next morning, Lena Brooks stood outside Evelyn's home with a mic in her hand, live streaming to 60,000 people. Ms. Cross, do you believe this is just an isolated incident? Evelyn looked into the lens, her posture unshaken. No, it's a pattern, but this time it picked the wrong mother. The clip was everywhere within an hour. CNN picked it up. MSNBC, even foreign outlets. Meanwhile, inside the police unions, headquarters, a damage control meeting was spiraling into chaos. We suspend Dunley. What's next? A federal investigation. It's already happening, someone said from the corner, and indeed, by afternoon, the Department of Justice issued a brief statement. We are aware of the incident involving Mrs. Evelyn Cross. All applicable protocols are being reviewed. Behind closed doors, subpoenas were already being drafted. Internal documents from the precinct were being pulled. Body cam footage, deleted, was now under forensic recovery, and in the quiet of her living room, Evelyn Cross opened a dusty photo album. She looked at her husband's army portrait, then at her son's law school graduation photo. She traced the edge of the frame with her fingers and said softly, They always forget the name until it writes history. Adam Cross arrived in Georgia, the way a hurricane rolls toward the coast. Silent, building pressure, inevitable. He didn't come with cameras or security detail, though he could have. He didn't come to make a speech or pose for interviews or announce some moral crusade. He came as a son. His flight touched down at 9:45 a.m. By 10:30, he was seated in the back of a sleek black sedan, heading straight for the Fulton County Courthouse. His face unreadable, His mind focused. The driver, a local attorney named Patel, who had interned under Adam years ago, tried to break the silence. "You sure you want to go in person?" Adam finally looked up. "They touched my mother." Patel nodded. "Understood." As the sedan cut through morning traffic, news anchors across the state were reading updates about DOJ interest in the Evelyn Cross incident. Some reports called it a rare case of elite accountability. Others framed it as a human story of power flipped on its head. But inside the courthouse, it wasn't headlines that worried people. It was Adam's name. Judge Dillard, the same man who had dismissed police misconduct cases for years, sat in chambers reviewing the emergency filings, motion to release. All internal police memos related to Officer Travis Dunley's behavior over the past 18 months. The clerk standing beside him whispered, "Sir, he's not just here to represent his mother." Dillard looked up. "What do you mean?" "He's filing civil rights charges against the department, possibly the union." A beat of silence. Dillard leaned back in his chair. "Well, that changes things." By noon, Adam entered the courtroom. A head turned. Dressed in charcoal gray, briefcase in hand, he moved like a man who carried more than just law. He carried memory. His expression was calm, but his presence was thunder. Across the room sat Officer Travis Dunley, pale and stiff in a folding chair beside his lawyer. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten, and now he couldn't breathe. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Cross, we weren't expecting you to argue personally." Adam nodded. That would have been a mistake. He approached the bench. "Your Honor, we are not here over just a traffic stop. We are here over a system that believes it can act without consequence until one of its targets knows the law better than it does." The courtroom was silent. Adam continued, "My mother spent her life defending this country's most sacred promise, equal protection under the law. She was harassed, humiliated, and profiled by a man wearing the badge of the very system she served. Today, we make it clear there will be accountability." Outside the building, a crowd had gathered, protesters, supporters, cameras, placards reading "Justice for Evelyn" waved alongside others that read "Accountability Now." Back inside, Adam submitted 2 thick binders. One contained Travis's full internal review record, complaints, citations, informal warnings, all previously buried. The other contained body cam footage from a separate case that had mysteriously gone missing but had been recovered by DOJ technicians Adam worked with. The judge took the binders, scanned the covers, frowned. "Motion granted for expedited hearing," he said. "Officer Dunley is suspended until further review." As the gavel struck, Travis looked like someone had ripped the ground from under him. But Adam wasn't done. He turned calmly and walked out of the courtroom. Outside, the press swarmed. He stopped, faced them, and spoke once. "This isn't about revenge. It's about memory. My mother's and the system's." Then he left. Back at Evelyn's house, she was watching from her porch again, radio humming in the background, birds fluttering through the garden. She heard the car before she saw it. Adam stepped out. No words were exchanged at first, just a hug. Long, firm, unshaken. He finally said, "We've got momentum." She smiled. "Just don't let them spin it." That night, local news ran a story headlined, "Prosecutor Son of Harassed Widow Files Motion Against Police Department." But national headlines were blunter. "The DOJ just got personal." In the shadows of the precinct, officers whispered among themselves. Some defended Travis, others called him reckless, and a few wondered quietly, if that's what she raised, what else is she capable of? The question lingered long after the lights went out, because when systems forget the names of the quiet, they forget who taught them how to roar. The folder smelled like dust and old paper. Adam sat at a wooden table deep inside the county records office, flipping through complaint logs that hadn't seen light in years. A clerk hovered behind him nervously, chewing her lip. These were supposed to be destroyed after 7 years, she said. Adam didn't look up. But they weren't. No. He didn't thank her. He didn't nod. He just kept reading. The first report was from a black teenager named Khalil Ramsey, dated back 8 years, said he was stopped, threatened, and searched without reason by Officer Travis Dunley. No charges, no citation, just fear. The next file, an elderly man with a walking cane, shoved to the ground for resisting questioning. Complaint dismissed. Another, a Latina nurse pulled over in scrubs, late for her night shift. License tossed. Phone taken. Complaint marked unsubstantiated. One after another, Adam flipped pages. Names, faces, lives, stories buried like old bones. Except the rot had never really stayed underground. Outside the records office, the town still looked the same. Quiet streets, southern charm, magnolia trees swaying in the warm breeze. But beneath that, something had shifted. People watched each other differently now. Conversations felt shorter. Eye contact lingered longer. Back at Evelyn's home, she stood at her closet, hands brushing the fabric of an old navy suit, one she hadn't worn in years. It still fit. Layla, a neighbor's granddaughter who helped her with errands, stepped inside. "You going somewhere fancy, Miss Cross?" Evelyn smiled. "Just caught." Layla blinked. "Again?" "This time I'm not sitting in the back." 2 hours later, Evelyn stepped into the Fulton County Courthouse, the heels of her shoes clicking sharply against marble. The air smelled of floor polish and fear. Some recognized her, some didn't, but everyone paused. She walked straight to the public records room. A young white man in uniform stood by the entrance, arms crossed. "You got clearance to be back here?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She opened her purse and handed over a yellow document, signed years ago, still legally binding. Federal Observer. Status, Civil Rights Division, ratified under Section 12. He looked at the paper, then back at her, then stepped aside. Inside, she found Adam waiting with stacks of files. He looked up and grinned faintly. "Didn't think you'd actually come. I fought in this room before you could spell your name," she replied. He slid a folder across the table. "Take a look at this." Inside, a complaint filed by a woman named Diane Mallory. She had claimed Officer Dunley forced her out of her car at gunpoint. She had screamed. Her child in the back seat had screamed louder. No video, no witness. Dismissed. Evelyn closed the file slowly. "Diane was my student once. You knew her. She dropped out the next year, moved away. I always wondered why." Adam leaned back. "They made a career out of burying this stuff." "They always do," she said. They worked in silence for the next hour, reading, highlighting, marking timelines, piecing together a map of misconduct that didn't just point to one man, but to a culture. Later that night, Adam hosted a closed-door meeting with a few civil rights lawyers, local organizers, and a data analyst from Washington. The room buzzed with numbers and names. "There's a pattern here," one attorney said. "The same 5 officers pop up over and over." "And the cases they target," another added. "Low income, mostly black or Latinx, mostly silent." Adam circled a section on the whiteboard. "We bring this public. Suddenly it's not about my mother anymore. It's about an entire ecosystem of abuse." Someone asked, "How much proof do we need?" Adam didn't hesitate. "We already have enough. Now we need a witness." The next morning, Evelyn walked to a small house on the edge of town. It was old, worn, but clean. She knocked twice. The door opened slowly. It was Diane Mallory. She stared at Evelyn for a long moment, then let her in without a word. They sat in the living room, silence between them like a bridge too long abandoned. Evelyn finally said, "You remember what he did to you?" Diane nodded. "I never forgot, but I tried to." You have a daughter, right? She's 12 now. Would you testify? Help us bring him down, bring them all down. Diane stared at the floor. I'm scared. I was too, Evelyn said. Every time I walked into a room where they wanted me silent, but I went anyway. Diane looked up. Why now? Evelyn smiled. Because someone finally filmed it. Later that evening, in the heart of the city, a new article hit the front page of the state's biggest paper. Decade of abuse uncovered, civil rights prosecutor builds case against entire precinct. And beneath it, a subheading, former victims begin stepping forward. Inside the precinct, panic bloomed. Lieutenant Marks screamed into his phone, "Who's leaking this stuff?" A voice on the other end replied, "It's not a leak, it's a damn breaking." Meanwhile, Travis Dunley stared at his TV in silence. The clip of Diane Mallory's upcoming testimony aired on local news. She didn't speak in it, just a still photo and voiceover, but Travis saw her eyes, and in them he saw something he wasn't ready for: survival. The next day, Evelyn walked into the courtroom again. Not to testify, not to observe, but to remind them who she had always been. Adam stood beside her. Together they weren't just mother and son, they were history and justice, walking hand in hand. The air inside the precinct was thick with tension. Conversation stopped when doors opened. Eye contact flickered like faulty lights. For the first time in years, the cops weren't the ones being watched. They were the ones watching each other. Lieutenant Marks slammed the conference room door behind him. "This is a witch hunt." Sergeant Hoffman looked up slowly from his seat. "Maybe they found the right witches." Marks narrowed his eyes. "You better watch yourself. I'm not the one they're coming for, but the truth was, no one in that building felt safe anymore. Not after the files Evelyn and Adam had uncovered. Not after Diane Mallory's name became the centerpiece of a growing list of forgotten victims. Outside the precinct, protesters had begun showing up every day, holding signs, taking videos, live streaming. Inside, Officer Dunley sat alone in the locker room, staring at the same spot on the floor for nearly 20 minutes. He hadn't been suspended yet, not officially, but no one would partner with him. His patrol schedule had been temporarily paused. He was toxic. Even the rookies avoided his gaze. And worse, his own silence was starting to echo, he thought. About the last time he'd felt truly powerful, it wasn't long ago, maybe a year. He'd pulled over a kid in a hoodie, young, nervous, alone. The fear in his eyes had made Travis feel invincible. But now, all he felt was small. In a conference room across town, Evelyn and Adam were sitting with two state investigators. They were going over files that hadn't been opened in decades. One of them, stamped "classified internal only," contained sealed communications between precinct brass and a local prosecutor. Adam slid the document across the table. This was an internal deal. They were protecting each other. The investigator, a young black woman named Renee Walters, scanned the pages quickly. "This is enough to trigger a federal investigation into conspiracy and obstruction," Evelyn said quietly. "It's never about one man. It's the silence around him." Adam leaned forward. "What we need now is the missing link. Someone from inside the department willing to talk." The room fell silent. Back at the precinct, Sergeant Hoffman sat at his desk, alone. He watched an old recording of Evelyn Cross giving a speech at a community college 20 years ago. She was fire and grace, speaking to students about justice, resilience, memory. He remembered that day. He'd been in the back of the room, young, naive, impressed. He clicked pause, and then he picked up the phone. An hour later, he was in a parked car outside an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Adam met him there. No cameras, no witnesses. Hoffman didn't shake his hand. He just said, "I've been here 18 years. I've seen every cover-up. I've signed off on some of them. But I won't be part of this one." Adam stayed quiet. Hoffman continued. They'll come after me. But I kept copies, records, emails. I even have dashcam backups they thought were deleted. Why now? Adam asked. Hoffman looked away. Because your mother reminds me of the one good case I let go. Adam nodded slowly. We'll protect you. Hoffman handed him a hard drive and a thick envelope. You'd better, because once this drops, the department won't survive. The next morning, Adam called a press conference. Cameras lined the street. Reporters leaned over barricades. The courthouse steps hadn't seen this much tension since the mayor's indictment 5 years ago. Adam stepped up to the mic, flanked by lawyers, organizers, and Evelyn, dressed in the same navy suit, holding a folder of her own. My name is Adam Cross, he began. I'm not just here as a federal prosecutor. I'm here as a son of the woman who was profiled and humiliated by a man who thought the law was his weapon. Today, we make it clear, justice is not optional. He held up the hard drive. This contains dashcam footage, internal memos, and deleted reports spanning over a decade. We are officially requesting a federal review of the Fulton County Police Department under Title VI. Reporters exploded with questions. Is Officer Dunley being arrested? Will the entire department face charges? Is this a political move? Adam simply said, This is not politics. This is memory made permanent. Behind him, Evelyn stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but every syllable cut through the noise. I marched with Dr. King. I watched cities burn. I saw history written in blood and fear, but I never stopped believing in one thing. Truth echoes even in silence. And now, the silence is breaking. That night, cable news ran wall-to-wall coverage. One anchor said, It started as a traffic stop, but it's ending as a reckoning. Inside the precinct, Sergeant Hoffman's desk was empty. He had been placed on administrative leave. Officer Dunley was under official investigation. Lieutenant Marks was nowhere to be found. But Evelyn was exactly where she had always been, in her garden, sipping tea. Layla visited again, wide-eyed. Miss Cross, you're all over the news. Evelyn smiled. Good. Then maybe they'll remember my name. Layla hesitated, then asked, Do you think they'll actually change anything? Evelyn looked at her, really looked at her. Only if we make them. And with that, the woman they once tried to silence planted another seed. There are moments when silence ends with a bang, not because someone screams, but because someone finally listens. That's exactly what happened the day the evidence hit the public. It started with a single headline from the Atlanta Tribune. Files reveal pattern of abuse in Fulton Police, DOJ investigating. Within hours, it was everywhere. National outlets, social media, podcasters, civil rights groups, even celebrities began reposting clips of Evelyn Cross speaking on the courthouse steps. The footage of Adam holding the hard drive became a symbol. Overnight. Meanwhile, inside the Fulton County District Attorney's office, chaos had taken root. What do you mean these cases were buried? One assistant DA shouted, These complaints should have triggered oversight years ago. A senior prosecutor leaned forward, voice tight. They didn't want oversight. They wanted obedience. Files were flying. Case numbers were being cross-referenced. One intern found 7 sealed cases tied to Officer Dunley, 3 of them involving minors, all dismissed. No legal follow-up. No formal reprimand. And suddenly, people weren't just angry, they were scared. Back at the precinct, Travis Dunley stood in front of his locker. Someone had scrawled "Federal Target" in black Sharpie across his name tag. His hands trembled as he reached up to wipe it, but it didn't come off. He sat down, put his head in his hands. For the first time, he knew what it felt like to be watched, judged, and powerless. Elsewhere, Evelyn was receiving dozens of calls. Former students, old colleagues, activists from decades past. You're a legend now, one said. I saw your clip in South Africa, another messaged. But Evelyn remained grounded. "I don't want to be a symbol," she told Adam. "I want to be a start." That evening they met with Diane Mallory again. This time she wasn't shaking. She wasn't afraid. "I'm ready to testify," she said, hands steady. "If this burns everything down, so be it." And she wasn't alone. Over the next 3 days, more victims came forward. A mechanic, a schoolteacher, a teenage boy who'd kept his trauma hidden for years. Each story built on the last. And each time Evelyn listened, calm, focused, unwavering, Adam compiled the testimonies into a formal case file and submitted it to the DOJ. Within 24 hours, an official investigation was launched. The press ran with it. Federal civil rights probe launched after cross-family's public battle. Elderly widow and prosecutor son trigger sweeping reform push. At a local cafe, a young woman turned to her friend and whispered, "They thought she was just another black grandmother." The friend replied, "She was the beginning of the end." But with attention came pushback. Threats started coming in. Anonymous voicemails, letters slipped into mailboxes, an envelope left on Adam's windshield with a single typed line. "Go. Back to DC or disappear." He showed it to Evelyn. She didn't flinch. Cowards bark loudest before they fall. Still, Adam tightened security. He installed cameras around the house, hired a retired marshal for surveillance, but Evelyn refused to leave. "This is my home," she said, "and I'm not done here." Meanwhile, inside the precinct, cracks widened. Lieutenant Marks was finally placed on suspension. His desk was cleaned out at night by 2 plainclothes officers. His office was sealed off. The chief issued a vague statement. "We are cooperating with federal investigators and are committed to transparency." But no one believed it, not after a new memo leaked. The memo, dated 2 years ago, detailed a meeting where Officer Dunley's conduct had been flagged by an internal reviewer, yet no action was taken. The reviewer, Sergeant Hoffman. The fallout was immediate. His administrative leave turned into termination, but he didn't stay silent. At a press conference hosted by the Georgia Civil Rights Coalition, Hoffman stepped up to the podium. "I should have spoken up earlier. But I'm here now, and I'm backing every word in that hard drive." Reporters swarmed him. "Are you afraid?" He looked them dead in the eye. "Not anymore." That clip went viral. Evelyn watched it from her living room. She nodded once. "They're finally learning," she whispered. The next morning, a surprise development shifted everything again. One of the reopened cases, an unsolved custodial death, had evidence tampered with. A rookie officer named Bell, who had since left the force, agreed to testify. He had been told to lose the footage. By whom? Lieutenant Marks. Now Marks wasn't just suspended. He was under criminal investigation. Adam knew what this meant. He pulled Evelyn aside that evening. "We're close." She looked at him. "To what?" "To bringing the whole system down." She sipped her tea. "That's never the goal." Adam raised an eyebrow. "No?" "The goal is to make sure it never rises like that again." He smiled. "Then we're on the right path." As the sun dipped below the horizon, lights from news vans lit up their neighborhood. Reporters camped outside. Strangers left flowers at the gate. Signs that read, "Thank you, Mrs. Cross," hung from porch rails. But inside the house, Evelyn remained still. Her phone buzzed with messages, but she ignored them. Her focus was on the people coming next, the ones who'd tell their stories. Now that someone had finally held the door open. Late that night, she wrote something in her notebook. They thought silence was safer, but silence echoes, and now it roars. The courtroom was packed before the doors even opened. Reporters lined the hallways. Law students scribbled in notepads from the gallery. Retired judges sat in the back row, arms folded. They all knew this wasn't just another hearing. This was history trying to breathe again. Evelyn Cross entered silently, dressed in grey silk and pearls. She didn't speak. She didn't wave. but every camera turned toward her. Some whispered, others stared. Adam walked just behind her, carrying a folder of evidence, his suit crisp, his face unreadable. Across the aisle sat Travis Dunley, slouched in his seat. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. He didn't respond. His hands shook slightly. Hidden beneath the desk, at the front of the courtroom, Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses. She had presided over dozens of high-profile cases, but none had drawn this kind of national heat. She tapped the gavel. This court is now in session. Diane Mallory was called first. She walked with measured steps, dressed modestly, her chin high. The bailiff helped her into the witness chair. She took the oath, hand raised, voice steady. Adam stood. "Ms. Mallory, can you tell us what happened the night Officer Travis Dunley pulled you over?" She inhaled once, and then it began. "I was driving home from work. My daughter was in the backseat asleep. I was tired but alert. I signaled, I stopped at every light, and then the flashing lights came." Her voice didn't tremble. It sharpened. "He ordered me out of the car. No reason, he yelled, called me a liar, said my registration didn't match him, but it did." She paused. "He pulled me out anyway, put his hand on his gun. My daughter woke up crying." The courtroom was silent. No coughs, no rustling. He searched my trunk, my purse, my glove box, threw my ID on the ground. I asked him, "Why?" He said, "Because I can." A quiet gasp echoed from the gallery. Adam leaned forward. "Did you file a complaint?" "I did. It was dismissed as inconclusive. I lost my job 2 weeks later. I couldn't sleep right for months. My daughter still asks if police will hurt us again." Adam nodded. "Thank you." Travis's lawyer stood up. "Ms. Mallory, are you sure it was Officer Dunley? It was years ago." Diane stared him down. "Do you forget the face of someone who made your child scream?" Silence. The lawyer sat down. Adam approached the bench. "Your Honor, I'd like to admit into evidence the original dashcam footage retrieved from the incident. It was thought deleted." The judge nodded. "Admitted." The screen came alive. It was grainy but clear. There she was, Diane. There was the car. The child's cries echoed. Travis's voice, aggressive and cold, cut through the air. The courtroom watched in stunned silence. Then came the moment. "You won't think I need a reason. You're lucky I don't cuff you just for back talk." When the footage ended, not a soul moved. The judge cleared her throat, but her voice caught. She drank water, then continued. "Let the record show the footage is verified. Time-stamped and unaltered." Evelyn watched quietly. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply watched the truth do what truth does, unfold slowly, then all at once. More witnesses came. The school teacher, the mechanic, a teenage boy now grown into a young man wearing a suit, holding his hands still as he spoke. They all told different versions of the same story. Wrong stops, wrong tone, wrong treatment, same officer. And every time Evelyn's name came up, she encouraged me. She told me to come forward. She said silence was where they got their power. At one point, the judge asked for a recess. The bailiff escorted Diane out of the courtroom. Adam walked alongside her. "You did incredible," he said. She nodded. "Feels like breathing after years underwater." Meanwhile, Evelyn stepped outside to the courthouse steps. The crowd had grown. Reporters leaned forward. "Mrs. Cross, any comment on the testimony?" She looked at them. "Do you believe us now?" No one answered, but their silence was loud. Inside, Travis sat with his head down. His lawyer leaned close. "You have to speak. You have to say something. This doesn't look good." Travis didn't reply. He was staring at his own hands, the same hands that had slammed doors, ripped IDs, grabbed wrists too hard. Now they trembled. The judge returned. "We will resume testimony." But this time, Adam had something else. "I'd like to call Sergeant Daniel Hoffman to the stand." Gasps. Hoffman walked in, looking older, heavier. But his eyes were clear. He took the oath. Adam asked, "Did you witness a pattern of misconduct in your department?" "Yes." "Did you ever report it?" "I tried. Once. I was told to let it go. So I did. That's on me." He paused. "But not anymore." He produced a copy of an email chain, one that had never been made public. It showed communication between the precinct and the city attorney, actively burying complaints. Judge Morrison took the copies, read, sighed. "This court will take a 10-minute recess." When she left the bench, the energy in the room shifted. Reporters typed furiously. Observers whispered. Travis sank lower in his chair. Adam turned to Evelyn. She met his gaze. He mouthed the words, "Almost there." She gave a single nod. As recess ended, Judge Morrison returned with a new expression, one carved from years of stoic restraint, now thinned by undeniable truth. "This court finds sufficient evidence to recommend further criminal proceedings," she said. "A federal grand jury will be summoned." Gasps. Then cheers outside, then more silence. This is no longer just a hearing. This is now a federal matter. And with one sentence, the entire room shifted. Outside the courthouse, cameras captured the moment Evelyn Cross stepped down the steps, her son by her side, the law behind her, and history under her heels. It started with a tweet from the governor's press secretary. "We support transparency and accountability. All citizens deserve equal protection under the law." Short, vague, safe, but it wasn't enough. By noon, the hashtag Justice for Evelyn was trending nationwide. Civil rights groups launched fundraisers. Legal watchdogs demanded full audits of every precinct in Georgia. Students marched in college towns with signs that read, "Silence protects power. Evelyn broke both." Inside the Capitol, nervous conversations unfolded behind closed doors. "How deep does this go?" one advisor asked. "Too deep," came the reply. The Attorney General had already made a call to the DOJ, requesting updates. Whispers of emergency legislation floated through committee rooms. But nothing could move fast enough to match the rage outside. Meanwhile, Adam Cross stood at the center of it all. He hadn't shaved in 2 days. His inbox overflowed. Offers to appear on national shows, requests for interviews, messages from senators, even a call from a former president. But his focus stayed narrow. He was reviewing a case file from 2015. A teenager named Jordan Fields, pulled over, tased, hospitalized. Officer Travis Dunley. Complaint dismissed, but buried deep in the medical report was a sentence. Patient stated officer laughed during restraint. Adam stared at those words. Then he pulled out his phone. "Renee," he said when the DOJ agent answered. "Add Jordan Fields to the witness list." She hesitated. "Adam, we're getting calls, threats." "What kind?" "Cyber threats. Your DOJ email was targeted. Someone tried to breach your accounts. We stopped it, but it's coordinated." Adam sighed. "They're scared." "Yeah," she replied, "which means they're dangerous." Across town, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, letters spread across the surface. Some were thank you notes, others were hand-drawn pictures from children. A few were typed in block letters, signed anonymously. One read, "We always believed in you, Mrs. Cross. Thank you for reminding us who we are." She smiled. Layla knocked and entered. "Miss Cross, there's a car outside." Evelyn looked up. "Whose?" "Government plates." Evelyn rose, calm, certain. She stepped out onto the porch just as a black SUV door opened, and out stepped a woman in a tailored navy suit. "Mrs. Cross?" "Yes. I'm Deputy Director Elise Bryant, Department of Justice." They shook hands. "I came personally," Bryant said, "because I wanted you to hear it directly. A full federal investigation into systemic misconduct within Fulton. PD has been authorized." Evelyn's eyes didn't widen. Her voice didn't rise. She only said, "Took you long enough." Bryant chuckled. "You've started something bigger than this city." "No," Evelyn corrected. I just reminded it. That night, Adam addressed a packed town hall meeting at the community center. Reporters lined the back walls. Church elders sat in the front row. Cameras streamed the event live. Adam stepped up to the mic. "My mother told me something the day this all started," she said. "Let them see themselves. That's what this case has done, and what we've seen is shameful," the room murmured. "But now we turn that shame into structure. I'm proposing a statewide task force, civilian-led, to oversee policing conduct." Applause erupted. He continued, "We'll push for mandatory body cams, independent review boards, annual audits of traffic stops by race, age, and zippy, code, and above all, we'll protect the whistleblowers." More applause. Evelyn watched from the side, her hands folded. Later that night, as Adam packed up his notes, a staffer rushed in. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him a phone. New video, grainy footage, shot secretly. Officer Dunley meeting with two men in a parking lot, exchanging an envelope, speaking in hushed tones. Captioned, "Why is a suspended officer still moving like he's on the job?" Adam's heart dropped. "This isn't just fear," he muttered. "It's sabotage." He showed the clip to Evelyn that evening. She didn't blink. What does he think he can still protect? Whatever's left of the silence. The next morning, a bombshell broke. Travis Dunley, linked to private security firm with city contracts. The article detailed connections between Dunley and a firm that had received over $2.4 million in security funding, approved through backdoor deals with Lieutenant Marks. Now it wasn't just racism, it was fraud, corruption, bribery. Adam sat at his desk, stunned. They weren't just abusive, they were making money off it. Evelyn stepped in, holding a newspaper. "Did you know the woman who wrote this?" Adam shook his head. "No. She was one of my law students. Back when they said women didn't belong in courtrooms." He smiled faintly. "Looks like you raised an army." She returned the smile. "I planted seeds. They bloomed." That day, the mayor of Fulton publicly apologized, called for the resignations of all senior officers involved, proposed a special election for new police oversight board members, but not everyone was ready to surrender. In a dark office, a man in uniform poured a glass of whiskey. He stared at a list of names: Evelyn's, Adams, Hoffman's, the reporters, the judges. He circled 3, then picked up a burner phone. We may need to remind them who still holds the strings. But what he didn't know was that the strings were already unraveling, because outside that same building a small crowd had gathered, not to protest, not to scream, but to register voters. And Evelyn's name was printed on the clipboard under a new initiative, the Cross-Act Community Control of Policing. As the sun set and the city buzzed with uncertainty, one thing was clear: the system wasn't just shaking, it was breaking. There was a smell to fear when it got political, not the raw, primal kind that came with sirens or street protests, but the polished, manicured. Fear that lived in offices with leather chairs and sealed windows. And now that fear was dripping through the marble walls of the Fulton County Government Building. 3 resignations hit the news by mid-morning. First, Chief Howard Kemper of the Fulton PD. Second, Internal Affairs Director Lila Brooks. Third, the mayor's chief of staff. Each of them blamed external pressure and media interference. But everyone knew what really broke them: evidence, testimonies, and Evelyn Cross. "She didn't say a word in that press conference," one councilman whispered. "She didn't have to." In D.C., a congressional subcommittee requested a briefing. In New York, a law firm launched a pro bono initiative named Crosswatch. In Oakland, a local school changed the name of its library to the Evelyn Cross Community Archives. But back in Georgia, the war was still being fought. Adam sat in a secure DOJ meeting with Renee Walters and 2 federal auditors. They were reviewing financial documents tied to the private security firm connected to Dunley. "This is bad," Renee said. They funneled millions, ghost contracts, no oversight. Adam rubbed his eyes. We can't just charge a few officers. We're talking about organized embezzlement. The auditor nodded. If we move forward, the state will erupt. Let it, Adam said. They built this fire. We're just removing the curtains. Meanwhile, Evelyn received an invitation to speak at Spelman College, another to sit on, a national commission, a third to record a message for the Library of Congress. She declined all three. I'm not done here, she told Layla, who was now assisting her full-time. But you've inspired so many. I'm not trying to inspire, Evelyn interrupted. I'm trying to finish what they never thought I'd start. Outside her home, cameras waited. She ignored them. Inside, she lit a candle beside her husband's photo. Almost there, love, she whispered. That night, Evelyn sat with Adam on the porch. Ma, he said, I think I found the missing link. He handed her a file. What am I looking at? A sealed deposition from 10 years ago, from a whistleblower who vanished. She worked inside the mayor's office. And, she wrote, I was asked to destroy complaint records connected. To Officer Dunley. I refused. I was told to resign quietly or else. Evelyn stared at the page, her jaw clenched. What's her name? Carmen Elridge. I remember her. She tried to bring me flowers after a march, and told me I was her hero. She disappeared 2 months later. We find her, Evelyn said. Now. It took 3 days. They found Carmen in a trailer outside Augusta, living under a different name. She answered the door slowly, grey streaks. In her once jet-black hair. Mrs. Cross, she whispered. They told me you were... I'm still here. I thought you'd forgotten me. I never forget fighters. Inside, Carmen cried as she told the full story. The pressure, the threats, the night someone slashed her tires, the letter with no return address that read, Next time it'll be your lungs. They owned everything, she said. Even the silence. Adam recorded her testimony. It was the last piece. With Carmen's statement, Adam filed an amendment to the case, escalating it from police misconduct to statewide. Organized corruption. The grand jury was summoned immediately. Reporters scrambled. Senators weighed in. Church leaders called for mass prayer vigils, but the most powerful response came in the form of a letter, one sent to every state representative, signed by 300 community leaders and over 900 former victims. At the top of the page, it read, You let this happen. Evelyn didn't. Inside the courtroom, Officer Dunley sat stiff. His lawyer looked half-broken. Across from them, Carmen sat behind bulletproof glass, flanked by 2 marshals. When she walked past Evelyn, they locked eyes. Thank you, Carmen whispered. Evelyn reached out. No, thank you. When Carmen took the stand, the courtroom stilled. She spoke softly, but every word landed like a stone in water. They told me to burn files. I refused. They told me I'd be fired. I resigned. I left my life behind to stay alive. Judge Morrison asked, Why come forward now? Carmen looked toward Evelyn. Because she reminded me I was more than afraid. Gasps, quiet claps from the gallery. Travis Dunley slouched deeper. His hands trembled uncontrollably now. Outside, protesters held signs. Burn the system, not the people. Evelyn speaks. We listen. That evening, Adam sat in his office, staring at a blank document. Evelyn walked in. You okay? He didn't answer right away. Then, I think we just cracked the whole thing. She smiled. So what now? He turned his laptop toward her. A title sat at the top of the page. The Cross Act, Federal Proposal for Policing Transparency and Civil Oversight. She stared at it for a long time. You're turning our story into law. He nodded. It's what you taught me to do. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let's finish this. Late that night, as news anchors recapped the day's proceedings, one anchor closed with, We often think power is loud. But today, we saw what happens when dignity whispers and the world listens. And across the country, Millions did. Rain hit the courthouse steps like nails tapping on a coffin. Gray skies hung low over Fulton County, and the marble columns that once stood untouchable now felt like relics of a crumbling regime. The city was holding its breath. Inside, the grand jury returned. 12 sealed envelopes, 12 signatures, 12 lives about to change. Judge Morrison read them one by one. Officer Travis Dunley, indicted on 4 counts of aggravated assault. Under color of law. Lieutenant Harold Marks, indicted on charges of conspiracy, destruction of evidence, and misuse of public funds. Chief Howard Kemper, indicted for obstruction of justice, and the list kept going. Gasps, murmurs, phones buzzing. One woman in the gallery burst into tears. Adam Cross stood at the prosecution table, face stone cold. Evelyn sat behind him, hands folded in her lap, eyes never leaving the judge. No celebration, just confirmation. Truth had landed. Outside, protesters cheered in the pouring rain. Some hugged, others cried. One man fell to his knees and whispered, "Thank you, Evelyn," like a prayer, but inside the precinct it was war. As officers were escorted out in cuffs, others shouted. One tried to bolt, another cursed at the marshals. Paperwork flew, desks overturned. Phones rang with reporters demanding statements. No one picked up. In the corner of the break room, an older officer lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "We should have stopped it years ago," he muttered. No one answered. That evening, Evelyn turned off the television. She wasn't interested in seeing their faces fall. She was waiting for the real collapse, the one behind the curtain. And it came. Adam walked in with a white envelope. From the governor's office, he said. She opened it slowly. Inside was an official proclamation. In recognition of her lifelong fight for justice and dignity, the state of Georgia hereby declares June 8th as Evelyn Cross Day. She chuckled. They always offer flowers after setting fire. "But it's still something," Adam said. "I don't need a day," she replied. "I need a blueprint." He grinned. "You already wrote it." But while Fulton celebrated, something else was happening behind closed doors. In a suburban house 20 miles outside Atlanta, 2 men met in a garage. One wore a police union jacket. The other was a former city contractor whose name had come up in the embezzlement files. "She's got to go," one said. The other nodded. "We take her down. The story dies with her." They didn't know Adam had already flagged their names. He'd connected financial trails, call records, even plate numbers caught circling Evelyn's neighborhood at night. He was 5 steps ahead, and he had help. The retired U.S. Marshal, hired for Evelyn's protection, had a team of his own now. Silent men and women, rotating in unmarked cars, watching every corner. Evelyn didn't ask for them, but Adam knew. Real justice always comes with real risk. One night, around 2:45 a.m., a man in a black hoodie slipped through Evelyn's back gate. He didn't make it past the garden. A silent tackle, a knee to the back, zip ties, flashlight to the face. The marshal simply said, "Wrong house." The next morning, the news didn't report it. But word spread, Evelyn Cross is protected. Don't test fate. Meanwhile, Adam finalized the Cross Act proposal. He flew to D.C., met with representatives, legal scholars, and advocacy groups. The proposal outlined federal oversight boards with civilian leadership, mandatory release of police misconduct records, financial transparency for all city contracted firms tied to law enforcement, lifetime whistleblower protection under federal law. One senator called it radical. Adam responded, "No, it's overdue." Back in Georgia, Evelyn visited her husband's grave for the first time since the indictments. She didn't speak for a while. Then she said softly, "I thought I'd die quiet, forgotten. But look at us now." She placed her hand on the headstone. "You always told me truth has a long walk. I just didn't know I'd walk this far." Later that week, Judge Morrison signed the final authorization for statewide audits. She gave a statement. I've seen enough injustice to last 3 lifetimes. We owe Evelyn Cross a debt this system can never repay, but we can begin." And just like that, the dominoes fell. Cities across Georgia began conducting their own reviews. 2 neighboring counties announced officer terminations. Civilian boards were proposed in Savannah, Augusta, and Macon. State funding was frozen for precincts without full transparency protocols. But not all reactions were noble. A local talk radio host called it reverse racism. A group of retired officers filed a civil suit claiming emotional trauma. One newspaper tried to frame Evelyn as divisive. She didn't respond because by now she knew when the truth wins, the old world panics. And Evelyn Cross. She didn't panic. She planted and people grew. The Capitol smelled of cold marble and old power. Whispers echoed through the rotunda as Evelyn Cross was escorted through security, her grey shawl folded neatly around her shoulders, her steps deliberate and calm. She didn't wear a name badge. She didn't need one. They all knew who she was. Inside the hearing chamber, cameras buzzed softly, reporters lined the back walls, and representatives adjusted their ties and tablet screens. But when Evelyn entered, the room went still. Adam walked beside her, holding a slim black folder. He whispered, "You ready?" She looked ahead. "I've been ready for 70 years. When she took her seat before the Congressional Oversight Committee, no one spoke, not even the chairperson. The silence was respect. After brief introductions and a formal reading of the Cross Act's core provisions, the microphone was turned toward her. "Mrs. Cross," said a representative, "we welcome your statement." Evelyn adjusted her glasses, leaned in slightly, and began. "I was born in a time when people like me couldn't drink from the same fountains, couldn't sit in the same classrooms, couldn't vote without answering riddles. A few in the room looked down. But I had parents who believed silence was a disease, so they raised me with memory, and I carried that memory through marches, trials, and now, through indictments." Her voice didn't shake. "I didn't come here for applause. I didn't come here to be thanked. I came to remind you." She paused. "You represent a country that was built with 2 hands, one black, one white, one chained, one free. We are not here to tear it apart. We are here to finish building it." Several reps shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward. "This bill isn't radical. What was radical was letting abuse live unchecked for decades. What was radical was expecting people like me to survive and never speak." She glanced toward Adam. He gave a slight nod. "I don't need this bill for me," Evelyn continued. "I need it for the child who's going to be stopped tomorrow and doesn't know yet that silence can be broken." She folded her hands. "And if this bill fails, it won't be my story that suffers. It'll be yours." Silence. Then applause. Then, standing, applause. The chairperson cleared their throat. "Mrs. Cross, thank you. That was the most important statement I've ever heard in this chamber." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the Lincoln Memorial, Evelyn and Adam sat on a park bench nearby. The crowds were gone. The cameras were packed up, but the echo remained. Adam pulled out his phone. "It's everywhere. News anchors, hashtags. Even the White House account reposted your quote." She smiled faintly. "They'll forget again." "No, Ma, not this time." She looked out over the reflecting pool. "You know what I feared the most, Adam?" He turned toward her. "What?" "That I would leave without ever hearing someone say, 'We believe you.'" He said nothing, just reached over and held her hand. The next day, the Cross Act passed committee vote with overwhelming support. That night, schools across the country added a new module to their 10th grade civic studies curriculum, the Cross Case and Civil Oversight Reform. Meanwhile, back in Fulton County, the final round of trials began. Lieutenant Marks pled guilty, Officer Dunley was convicted, The mayor resigned and was replaced by a candidate who had once been tased at a protest Evelyn led in 1993. It was full circle. At Evelyn's home, Layla read letters out loud while Evelyn sat beside the window. "Dear Mrs. Cross," she read, "you don't know me, but I watched your speech with my mom." She cried. "I think I'm going to study law now." Another. "Thank you for showing us that. Dignity isn't weakness. It's power. Quiet, steady power." Evelyn smiled, then turned to Layla. "I want to go for a walk." They walked through the neighborhood slowly. Every porch light was on. People waved. Some bowed their heads. Others stood silently in tribute. They passed a mural being painted by teenagers. It was her face. Below it, a quote, "They forgot who I was, so I reminded them." She chuckled. "That's not what I said." Layla grinned. "Does it matter?" "No. It's theirs now." A few days later, Evelyn sat with Adam and the DOJ team for a final strategy meeting. She listened, offered advice, but mostly she let them carry it. "They've got it now," she whispered to herself. "Time to let go." But even as she let go, the world held on. Schools named after her, scholarships launched in her honor, a documentary in production. A Harvard professor wrote an entire course titled Justice and Memory, the Evelyn Cross Model. But Evelyn Cross, she stayed in Georgia, sat on her porch, watched her garden bloom again. One morning, a young journalist came to interview her. Fresh, out of grad school, nervous, awestruck. "Mrs. Cross, if you could say one thing to the younger generation, just one thing, what would it be?" She smiled gently, then said, "Don't wait to be powerful. You already are." The interview went viral. Millions shared it, but Evelyn never saw the numbers because she didn't need to. She had planted the roots, and now the world was blooming. The morning Evelyn Cross passed, the sky was unusually still. No wind, no birdsong, just the weight of quiet. She had fallen asleep in her favorite chair on the porch, wrapped in her grey shawl, a book resting on her chest. Her hands were folded as if she were still waiting for someone to ask her one more question, but she had already answered everything. The news broke before sunrise. Civil rights icon Evelyn Cross passes peacefully at 87. By 10 a.m., the world stood still. Flags lowered. Church bells rang, and on every screen her face reappeared, not as a victim, not as a fighter, but as the woman who made the world remember. Adam sat at her side when the paramedics arrived. He didn't cry right away. He just stared at her hand and whispered, "You did it, Ma. You really did it." Layla arrived an hour later, eyes swollen, holding a yellow flower Evelyn once told her was her favorite. "She told me she was tired," Layla whispered. Adam nodded. "She carried us all." 3 days later, the city hosted a memorial at the same courthouse where Evelyn had once changed everything with a glance, a walk, a voice. Over 3,000 people showed up. The governor attended. The mayor wept. Survivors of the Fulton scandal read passages from their statements, this time not from the witness stand, but from the podium of power. "She told me I mattered," said Diane Mallory. That was enough. Judge Morrison stepped up to the microphone, removed her glasses, and said, "I once asked Evelyn Cross what justice meant to her. She told me it was the sound of fear losing its voice. That's what she gave us. Silence. Undone. A choir sang her favorite hymn, 'A Change Is Gonna Come.' But it wasn't sad. It was defiant, uplifting. Free." Later that week, Adam stood before Congress again, this time not as a son or prosecutor, but as the bearer of his mother's will. He held up a piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. "This is a letter my mother wrote 5 years ago," he said. "She never shared it, but she asked me to read it only when the world was ready to listen." He unfolded it. "Read aloud. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. But don't mourn me. I didn't come here to be remembered. I came to make remembering easier for the next child who refuses to bow, If they ask who I was, tell them this: I was a mirror. I showed the truth. And if the truth scared them, good. Let it. I was never the storm. I was the crack in the sky before it. Let them keep building. We left them no place to hide. The chamber wept, and outside, under the full glare of national memory, something shifted. Street signs in Fulton were renamed. The police department was fully restructured. The Cross Act passed both houses of Congress. Evelyn's portrait now hangs in the Smithsonian, across from Rosa Parks. And in classrooms across America, children now recite not just presidents and generals, but mothers. Mothers like Evelyn. Her home became a museum. Her porch chair was roped off, preserved exactly how she left it. On the table beside it, one book still lay open. It was Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, and one sentence was underlined. In red, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. But still, like dust, I'll rise. On the one-year anniversary of her passing, thousands gathered in silence across different cities. No chants, no slogans, just candles. One by one, names were read aloud. Victims of police violence, survivors of broken systems, whistleblowers, forgotten warriors, and then Evelyn's. Every time her name was read, the crowd responded, "We remember." In a school gym in Chicago, a teacher asked a young girl what justice meant. She raised her hand and said, "Justice is when the truth walks in like Evelyn Cross." No one corrected her, they just nodded. At night, Adam sat on the same porch where she took her last breath. Layla joined him. "Feels like she's still here," Layla said. Softly, Adam smiled. "She is." They sat in silence for a moment. Then he asked, "You ever think about why she never got loud, never shouted?" Layla nodded. "Because power doesn't need volume, it needs clarity." He looked at her. "You gonna keep her work alive?" She looked at the stars. "We all are." And in the distance, the wind picked up. Not loud, not harsh, just enough to rustle the trees, like a whisper from a woman who had said enough and left behind a world finally ready to listen.